Hey, everybody. On the Run with Beards and Dunn is back again. Hey, Beards, how are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, Dunn. I'm in, actually just got to the Radisson Hotel in downtown Duluth because this weekend it's probably my favorite race ever, the Grandma's Marathon. It's I believe it's its 47th annual Grandma's Marathon this weekend. And, of course, I don't run it anymore, but I do a talk with Carrie Tollefson. It's called the Dick and Carrie Show tomorrow afternoon, which would be Friday, and at 4 o'clock. And then on Saturday morning, I'm in the lead vehicle doing the radio, and this year also a combination television, which you could actually watch there in New Bern or listen to it in front of the elite men, which is always lots of fun.
I've gone up to the longest day marathon and the Black Hills Marathon. I've got to go back to those races a couple times. And when I used to live there, I actually would say, do you need anybody? I was lead bike for a couple of these races.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I tell you, what's the best place to watch a marathon? From the lead vehicle or the lead? Because you're up there with the guys that are really duking it out, racing, and it's really fun to watch. And at the time just flies by.
It does. And Dunn, when I'm in the radio or in the lead vehicle with Charlie Maurer, he's works for Twin Cities Marathon, and Charlie does most of the work. He gets all the facts, and then kind of like you, he leads me into a story or something like that. But obviously I can't run one lap at the pace that these elite men are running at now, but 40 years ago I could, and so I know what they're going through physically and mentally. So you try to relay that to the listeners in layman's terms so that they understand it. And you're right, Dunn. That 26.2 miles, it goes by quick.
Maybe not when you're running all the time,
right,
but when you're watching it. And, we're definitely going to talk about Grandma some more in the near future because, Dick, at 47 years, you had the fastest time ever until just a couple years ago. Now you're number 2 with a 2:09:36,
yes.
I think it is. Yeah. And so, when you said you could run that fast a few years ago, no kidding. And, and I just want to mention before I forget, if people hang in there, we got an announcement to make at the end of today's podcast. And I'm super excited. And I think everybody who's listening will be super excited when they hear what we got coming up. But, okay. Well, let's kind of recap. We finished off with the Beards kind of made I call it your breakthrough. I mean, you were a national class runner, with a 2:16 at the Olympic trials, 16th fastest in the United States. And you followed it up, you backed it up with a Nike OTC in Eugene with a 2:15:20, I believe it was. And so, that was your 2:16 definitely wasn't a fluke because you were able to come back within a relatively short time and do it again, in fact, a little faster. But then you had the opportunity to go to New York City where you ran your 2:13:55. And I was actually looking at some results. Bill Rogers was 5th and ran like 2:13 and change.
Right.
I mean, man, the 5th through 10th guys, I mean,
we were tight.
You were tight.
Yeah.
You could have just as almost not easily, but a few seconds per mile faster, you would have been easily, in the top 5.
Right.
But anyway, that was really when I think people said, oh, God, there's some guy named Dick Beardsley, and holy smokes, he's pretty fast.
Yeah, that was definitely opened a lot of doors after that race. That's for sure.
That is so cool. Well, not to steal your thunder, but I was actually, after my wedding in May, I was healthy, and I started training that summer, and I spent most of June and July just building the base, and then in August, I'll probably put it on extras. I actually have my race results for 1980. It's not a lot. I have about 7 or 8 races, and they were getting faster.
Right.
I look back, and when you're 22, 23 years old, I could whip myself into shape in like 4 to 8 weeks.
Absolutely.
And I was back, running, I think I actually won the Augie Cross Country Invitational. SDSU, Dort, USD, all these runners got to there in Sioux Falls for the Augustana Cross Country Invitational. And they let independent runners, the Prairie Striders, I got to enter. And I was fortunate enough to win that race. And so I didn't win a lot of races in college, but that was a feather in my cap to beat my old teammates and some of these competitors from USD and stuff. And so I was really getting fit and ran some more races. And I really had a target of the longest day marathon, which is in Brookings. It's called the Brookings Marathon now. They called it the longest day back when it started because they actually did it on June 21st.
Can you imagine?
Oh my gosh. And it was a huge 1 lap course. They went 6 miles out of town, 6 miles west, 6 miles south, 6 miles east, 6 miles north, 26 miles.
And not
a
schmitten of shade.
Not a drop of shade. And hotter than blazes. And that's how they did it back in the 60s and 70s. Well, they finally said, let's move this into town. And so when I did it, it was a 2-lap course around the city of Brookings. And so I set that as a goal for that year.
And then, Don, excuse me for interrupting, but then did they move that to the fall then, correct?
They did. Yeah, it was like November. It was after, actually, Beards, I'm glad you brought that up. It was a week after your New York 213. You actually got in the car and drove to Brookings because you knew I was running the marathon, and you and Karen were in my support vehicle, if you would. They didn't have support vehicles, but you could just jump in a car and follow the race. There was nothing prohibiting you from doing that. So you were there, and I was pretty fit, and my old college roommate, really good friend, Randy Fisher. Now, this is 1980, and when you mentioned the Grandma's Marathon, I think I know he ran in 79 or 80.
I think 79. It was 79. He got third. Ran 2:19.
Yes, because Gary Bjorklund won it like 2:10.
No, that was 1980 when Gary ran 2:10.
Okay, so Randy got
maybe
third.
Fish ran it.
I think it was right in there.
Yeah.
He was fit. And so I was excited. He was excited. We're good friends. We lived together for 3 years in the same college dorm. So we definitely got along. We were like brothers.
Yeah.
And so Randy said, well, let's do this, Mike. And so we never really liked racing each other because we liked each other so much. And Dick will speak to this. You know, when you're in a race, it's every man for himself. Right. You're there representing you. But, you know, when you're with the teammates or with the good friends, we'll help each other out. I mean, if somebody's, hurting a little bit, you'll say, hey, just drop in behind me, catch a little draft.
Yeah.
There ain't much drafting and running. Well, you get a cup of water and you're going to throw it away and you go, here, buddy, you need some water. I mean, we're not cutthroat. It's not like we're tripping people out there. We're helping each other. We're each trying to do our best. And if we can help our buddy encourage each other, we did it. But it is a race. And so we said, well, let's run together because we can kind of feed off each other. So Randy said, you bet. So we got to the starting line, and I was excited because I grew up with the Brookings Marathon. It was always kind of one of my goals, and I never had run it. And I'm going to go on and give something away. Randy goes on in his career to win the Brookings Marathon 5 times.
Did he win it 5 times?
He won it 5 individual titles.
Nobody else has come close to that, have they?
No. I joke, and I hate to say things like this. If they ever want to rename the memorial or something,
right?
You have to die to honor somebody. Sometimes they name races after you. I swear that should be the Randy Fisher marathon because the guy dominated it. And I'm going to tell him he has the course record. He had the course record he set in 1980. In 1979, he ran 2:23:29 and had the course record. So we show up the next year, and I know Randy's fit, I'm fit. And we took off. We ran the first 13 miles in 1:10. We were right on, and we said, let's try to run 2:20 pace.
Yeah.
Okay. We both were fit enough to do it. So we ran the first lap in 1 hour and 10 minutes, the first 13.1 miles. And I know you were out there. My folks were up there. My mom and dad were watching the race, and that really helped motivate me and you guys in the car. And Randy, we were running well together. And I'll just tell you something. We didn't practice drinking very much in those days and really didn't drink water during training. I never did. And it was a cool day, and I think that was another one of those races, aid station every 5 miles. I mean, it's just how we did it. We thought that was overdone. We didn't need water every 5 miles. But they had it, and so we got by the 5-mile mark, and neither one of us said, I'm not stopping. I'm not going to get a drink of water. And Randy said, yeah, me neither. So we got to about 10 miles, and Randy goes, you stopping for some water, Mike? I said, nuh-uh. I feel great. I'm not sweating. I feel good. Okay, well, he didn't want to let, if you slow down to get a drink of water and the other guy doesn't, well, he's going to get a 30, 40, 50 meter gap on him. You choke down your water, and then you're kind of like, I got to catch up. And so he said, no, I'm not going to stop either. So we got to 15, and I was feeling great. And Randy said, Mike, you going to stop for some water? I said, I'm not going to stop. So he didn't stop either. And, I'm not advising endorsing this as a technique.
No.
And so, the wind started coming up, and it's a northwest wind, and we're hitting this long stretch on the north side of Brookings, heading straight west. And I'll put a picture on the extras. It's a great shot of Randy and I running into the wind. And it's from an overhead shot from an overpass that we have to run under. And though you can see the wind, our hair's blowing up in the air. And we turned the corner then at like about 20 miles, and there was a 20-mile aid station, and Randy goes, Mike, you going to stop for water? I said, I don't feel like I need it. I feel good. And Randy's thinking, man, I don't think Randy was feeling that good, and he didn't want to slow down. And so he didn't stop either. And so we have not, I'm not going to say we didn't grab a cup and like splash some in my mouth. I don't remember doing that.
But you couldn't have got a half a cup for the first 20.
I know we didn't do it. We just kept running. And about 21, 22, Randy was starting to suffer. And I don't know if it was the pace or the wind or the lack of fluids, or we had no nutrition.
Or a combination of the above.
All of those things. And Randy said, Mike, I'm not feeling so good. I'm really hurting it. And I said, well, let's just back it down a notch. Because when you're running with somebody and there was nobody in sight behind us, we were like 3-4 minutes ahead of third place. And we're just buddies out there running as fast, just working together. And I said, well, let's just ease back. And he goes, yeah, thanks. And sometimes all you got to do is take the foot off the gas for a few minutes. And, maybe you kind of, settle in.
Kind of get a second wind.
Going. Yeah, get a second wind. So we kind of did that from 22, 23, and we had 3 miles to go. And Randy the more I slowed down for him, the more he'd slow down.
Right.
And eventually, I know you and Karen came
Dunn,
up in the car.
I remember coming by in the car going, come on, Dunn. I think I was yelling like, run your race.
It was a tough spot for me because I really like Randy. He's a good friend.
But it is a race.
It is a race. And so I finally, at 23 miles, I remember Randy was not feeling it. And I said, Randy, I got to go. And I took off. I picked up my cadence and took off with 3 miles to go. And Randy didn't say, he didn't say, please don't or anything like that. He knew, he was on his own. And so I ran the last 3 miles in by myself. And I remember I got to about 26. We turned the corner on Maderi to head up to the Saxauer field. And you do 1/2, 3/4 of a lap on the track. I remember, man, I got to the track. I was not looking forward to that 3/4 of a lap around the track. I wanted to be done. Well, I did the lap around the track, and people were running towards me. I go, Mike, you're close to the record. You're close. And I could have cared less.
Right.
Beards, I don't know, at the end of a race, you're exhausted.
Oh,
you're
the last thing you want to do in a marathon is sprint.
The last thing, and I was just maintaining the pace. And I crossed the finish line, and they came up, and I can't remember if it was Bob Bartling or somebody, or Doc Roberts, Scotty Roberts. They go, Mike, you ran 2:23:34. I ran 5 seconds slower than Randy's course record. And at that point, you know what I said? No big deal. I didn't. And to this day, I don't regret. I was happy to just have that performance, and I felt good that I had a good race. Randy ended up coming in at 2:26. He lost 3 minutes on me, and I wasn't going all that fast. And so he was really slowing down. And Dwayne Millslagle from Aberdeen, Dwayne was a good runner. Spike Millslagle caught Randy on the track.
I remember that.
You talk about a nightmare. When you're dying, 1,000 deaths, and you're just praying, if somebody catches me, there's no way. And Randy, when he saw Dwayne coming, there wasn't a darn thing he could do about it. And Dwayne passed him with like 200 meters to go to take second place, and Randy ended up third. And bless Randy's heart, he went on after that to win that darn race, I think at least 4 more times.
Golly.
And so it was fun. And you were there, and I remember the Argus leader was up there following the race. Running a marathon in South Dakota back in the late 70s, early 80s was still a big deal. And so I remember I got interviewed and stuff like that for winning. And you got interviewed because of New York 1 week earlier. And there's a great shot of you in a hot tub in the Argus leader being interviewed by this sports reporter. I think it was Joel Brown. Well, anyway, so that ended up my 1980. And it pretty much, I don't think you had any races after New York, did you?
Nope. That was pretty much it. It was just, kind of cutting back on the intensity anyhow in the training, still keeping the mileage up there pretty high.
It was around the 1st of November when all this took place. And so we had all of November, December, but then I know you were kind of looking, I don't know when you went to Houston Marathon in January of 81.
Yes.
And so that was about 2 months away, I think it was January 10th. And you had told me about it. And I was like just coming off this 2:23. And so I was just, like you, kind of putting in recovery base miles. And you had been invited, correct?
Yes.
The race director at Houston had contacted Bill Squires or somebody. And really, that's the race director.
I still remember it isn't anymore, but he was the race director, I know, in 1981, and then when I went back in 82 again, yeah.
So can you share, how do they do that, Dick? For us lay people who've never been recruited to go do a marathon, I mean, I've begged my way into quite a few. And so how did he, did Coach Squires ring you up and say, hey, I got approached, or how's it go?
No. So after New York, again, that kind of opened some doors, and I got a phone call from this Jack Rakowski and said, we'd like to invite you to our marathon. We'll pay your expenses, your airfare. Your wife can come. We'll put you up in a nice hotel. And I think they might even gave me like $1,000 kind of under the table sort of.
Yeah, appearance money, they call it.
Yeah. Right. And so I thought,
for your time, yeah.
and I'd heard it was, a flat course. But back then, I don't know if you remember, Don, but it was on a part of an interstate. And it was cement. Out and back.
Well, Dick had told me about this. He goes, "Hey, Don, I got invited to this Houston Marathon." And I said, "Really? When is it?" January 10th. And I'm thinking, man, I'm fit. I'm healthy.
Yeah.
I'd like to go. And so, I can't remember. It was probably November, December. And I was thinking, I'd like to go to that race, but I have no money. And so I called, and you kind of, somehow or another, I got a hold of the race director and said, "Hey, I'd like to come run. My best is 2:20 from Black Hills in 79. I just ran a 2:23, in October." And the guy was very nice, very cordial. He goes, "Mike, if you can get here, you've got a number. You're no free entry. We'd love to have you come run our race." But again, I wasn't at a level where he'd like, "Oh, we're going to give you airfare and a room." He just said, "If you can get here, you can run, won't cost you a dime." And I thought, okay. And I think I told you, and you go, "Well done." Mary can't go for some reason. Her work, she couldn't take off that much time because I think we had another trip coming up we'll talk about here in a minute. And so he goes, "I'm going to be in this room at Houston. It's like the Hyatt Regency. It's right at the start area, not from the convention center. Just bunk in with me. So really, you don't need lodging and done. I'll just order extra food.
Exactly.
And you can eat off my tab."
Yeah,
and I said,
they were paying for my food too.
They were. And so, room and board, you had room and board. Well, they thought, damn, that marathon guy can really eat. Jesus, he eats enough for two guys. Well, anyway, so you said, "Mike, if you can get here, you bunk in with me, and so all you need is airplane money." I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. And even though I was working for Athletic Attic in Sioux Falls, Neil and Peggy Graff were the owners at that time, and they were really nice people. They would give me the time off of work. That wasn't a problem. Neil and Peggy wanted us to out running races and helping generate interest in their running store. And so they said, "Oh, if you can get there, well, you go." And so I thought, how am I going to get there? I needed like $200. The airplane to fly from Sioux Falls to Houston it was like back then, it was like $200. I didn't have $200.
No.
I was not going to go to my parents and try to beg money from my folks and stuff like that. So I thought, well, their local running club was really growing. There was hundreds of people in Sioux Falls running, and I knew most of them, Rich Greeno. And I went to the local running club. I think the membership was like $5 dues or something. And I said, "Hey," and I went to their meeting. They had a board meeting for the Runners Club like in November. And I said, and they said, "Mike, you're on the agenda. You want to speak with us?" I go, "Yeah." I said, "Here's my story." And I said, "Look, I'm a runner. I qualified for the 80 trials, but I couldn't go because of I'm trying to break 2:20. I'd like to go to Houston. Would the Sioux Falls Running Club be able to fund me?"
Yeah.
All I need is an airplane ticket, $200. And, it's, I was just grasping at straws saying, well, maybe, I could wear the Sioux Falls Running Club jersey,
Sure.
It's kind of like what you did with Dennis Franzen. All you have to do is ask sometimes.
Exactly.
And I was willing to ask, and I asked, and they were all my friends on the board. They were old guys then. They seem young to me now. But anyway, and they said, "Well, Mike, we think we're going to go into." They said we have to do a closed door to kind of discuss this. Because I don't think if they would have voted and 3 guys would have said no and 2 guys would have said yes, they didn't want me to be mad at those 3 guys. And anyway, I said, no problem. And I left the room, and it didn't take them long. And they said, "Mike, you can come back in now." And they said, "Hey, Mike, we think it's commendable that you want to go down there, and we want to encourage and support you, as much as we can. But, as a board, we're responsible for the money, and the people donate money as dues. And if we give you cash, well, who's to say the next guy who isn't maybe as fast as you ask for money? We say yes to you and no to him. And, it just gets a little muddy." And I said, "No, I understand. I nothing personal." I said, I just checking, just asking. And so as I was getting ready to leave, the meeting was coming to an end, and all that. And I have to give a shout out to a physician. His name was Dr. Bob Willix. And Dr. Bob Willix was the first cardiovascular surgeon in the state of South Dakota. He had come there to start a heart program for what was called Sioux Valley Hospital at the time. And Dr. Willix was a wonderful guy. What an inspirational heart surgeon, and very dynamic. You'd have to know him.
I remember meeting him.
He is just
great
his
guy.
His son Bob Willix Jr. lives in Raleigh, not far from me, and we've met and we've swapped stories. Bob Willix Jr. was a little kid at this
Yeah.
time. Now he's a full man. But Dr. Willix came up to me after the meeting, and he was on the board for the running club, handed me a check for $200 out of his own private account. And again, dear Beards, it almost tears me up.
I know.
This is a guy who said, well, here's some young guy. He hasn't got money, but he ain't got no money. I've got money, but I can't. He wanted to see how fast and help me to see how fast I could be. And he wrote me the check. He gave me a check for $200, paid for the ticket. And I got a ticket, and I was never so happy. So, the race is January 10th. Well, that Christmas, Karen and I came up to spend New Year's as we kind of traditionally did with you and Mary in Excelsior. And Beards, you were back. I know you were putting in 120 to 140 mile weeks leading up to this Houston Marathon. And I was fit. And so you and I started, we spent about 4 or 5 days together.
Yes.
And I have a picture I'm going to put on extras. And it's a picture of you and me sitting on a couch. We both look wasted. And I'm going to capture this picture. This is what 120 to 140 miles a week looks like. Right. 2 skinny little guys laying on the couch, half asleep, waiting to go out for their next run.
That was us.
And I tell you, that was so much fun and just great memories. And I remember the Golden Valley Junior College, Joe Bros, shout out to Joe Bros, Tony Shaughnessy, Ralph Edwards, all these great runners.
Studs.
From Minnesota. You were kind of, I don't want to say this, you were their Pied Piper, man. They knew about the Beards, and they loved you. And they were all on Christmas vacation. They were home in the cities within driving distance. Well, Beards would say, hey, Dunn and I are going for a 10-miler tomorrow or afternoon. And guys would show up. And I remember we did a 20 on Saturday. And there had to be 6, 7, 8 runners. And they were all these guys. And
it's so much fun.
Oh, it was so much fun. And it wasn't a fast, hard pace. It wasn't egos involved, like who can hang and who's going to get dropped. It was more of just out running and trying not to kill ourselves in snow and ice. But we were getting all those base miles in, and so were they. So then we cut to 1981 Houston Marathon. And the Beards gets down there a day or before I did, because you had to do some press and stuff.
I did.
Yeah. What was that like?
Well, it was pretty cool because that was the first time I was really at a big race where I was actually asked and got interviewed by the press. Up to that point, nobody really knew who I was, you know.
Your 2:13 ninth at New York kind of gave you that notoriety.
It did. And so I remember Houston Tentacle was the major sponsor, and they were a big oil company back then. So I met all these big wigs, and I got to run into Bill Rogers again because Bill was coming back.
Bill was invited kind of as the premier runner.
Right. And Bill was the premier marathoner in the world at that point back then. And so it was very exciting. And then knowing that Dunn was coming down and we were going to bunk up, I mean, it was...
it's like we're back in college again.
I know it.
I just remembered it was a great list. There was Jeff Wells, Ron Tabb. There was a guy named Lionel Ortega.
Yes.
Who I think had ran really well at
John Ludwig.
John Ludwig. And these guys were all, national class and Bill Rogers and world class.
Oh, it went on and on.
Yeah, Jeff Wells had run like 210 and stuff like that. And so it was a loaded field. And I was just like, I remember my race number, I think they seated us by, I had a 2:20:31. I think I have number 21.
Okay.
I have a scrapbook. That's how much it meant to me. I don't keep many race numbers. That's one I kept.
Yeah.
And in Boston. And so I had I guess I may have been the 21st fastest guy in the field with my 2:20 marathon. So there were 20 guys probably under 2:20 ahead of me. Well, anyway, I get into town. I don't know how I got a shuttle to the Hyatt Regency. And I went up to the front desk, and I was scared to death. And I go, I'm Dick Beardsley. Oh, yeah, you must be Mike. Dick said you'd be coming. Oh, just took I was like, I felt
Took
like I was
the pressure off.
I felt like I was doing something illegal.
You're not going to be sleeping out in the hallway on the floor.
I'm sneaking into Dick Beardsley's room. Don't tell anybody. We're only paying for one room and one ride. Yeah, anyway, so they let me in, and I just was hanging out. Then you showed up, and it was so good to see you. And it was the day before the race. And I don't remember anything of that night except you ordered plenty of food for both of us.
Right.
A lot of pasta, pizza, stuff like that. Well, the next morning then, we could run to this convention center, and they had a VIP room for the invited runners.
Yes.
And you obviously were one. I was quasi-invited in that I was given a free entry. That was about it.
Right.
But I was hanging onto your shirt tail because when we got there, I don't know how the guy screened who got into this VIP room or not, but you did, and I was with you.
Oh, yeah.
I was glued to your hip.
It was like I had you by the hand like a little
I know.
kid.
It's like I'm with Dick. I'm with Dick. I was the entourage. Well, I got in there, and here's all these invited runners sitting around, and everybody's it was pretty quiet.
Right.
So, right before a marathon, everybody's trying to get in their game face, and I know you're kind of famous for that, and we'll get into that later. But finally, it's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to race time, and everybody's kind of deserting this VIP area. And, you're hitting that bathroom for the last time, which finally worked for me that day. I was able to get in there. But I just remember you and I got out of the VIP area and went out to get to the starting line.
Yep.
Beards, how many runners were there between you and me and the starting line? Do you remember that?
I
don't.
don't.
A crowd. Oh, dude. It was like 1,000 people between you and me.
Oh, I must have been panicking.
Oh, you were freaking out. You said, holy, you're like, we got to get to the front. And Beard started kind of going, hey, excuse me. And he's kind of, most runners like, hey, buddy, you stay in your spot. I got this. And they looked at you and they looked at your number. What'd you have? Maybe 2 or 3?
I think that, yeah.
He had a very low number.
Single digit.
And somebody goes, hey. And it was like the parting of the Red Sea.
Right.
And they created I don't know how they did it, but the crowd just split and you kind of jogged, and man, I was glued to your hip.
You were.
Because if that crowd would have closed in behind you, I'd still be in 1,000th place.
Well, Dun, you spend all these months training, and here it is, a big day, and then, my biggest fear was always that
missing the start?
Yes, exactly.
Well, I just remember you said, hey, I've got to get to the front. You were kind of...
For me, I got pretty ornery.
Oh, you got a little panic. And it was a splitting. We got right to the front, lined up. The gun went off. I'm going to give you my version because mine is pretty quick. We went to the mile. I have in 4:57. Now, I'm a 2:20 marathoner, and I'm now running 2:11 pace. 5-minute miles.
Under
2:11 pace. And I felt great. I felt really easy. And I'm thinking, this ain't going to last long. And I had to make that decision. There was a lead pack of about 8 of you guys. Herm Atkins, Ron Tabb, Jeff Wells, Lionel Ortega, Bill Rogers, Dick Beardsley. And I'm right there. And I've seen a couple of photos. I think you have one. I think Bill Rogers had one in his running store of like at the mile mark. I can see myself in the very back of the pack.
Yeah.
Just starting to drift off because I thought I have got to back. I cannot run at this pace for a marathon. So I fell off that lead pack after the mile and went through 2 miles. And I have this all written memorized. 10:10. Went through, I was flying along there. But all at once I was in no man's land. And I don't know if you know what that means, Dick. I'm not fast enough to run with the fast guys. And there's nobody behind me.
And it's the worst place to be.
I might as well be out on a training time trial. You guys are, within 3-4 miles are pretty much I can maybe see you on the straightaways down the road, 2 minutes ahead of me. I look back, nobody behind me. I'm running alone. And
that's
just,
tough.
Okay, it is. You just have to really kind of get in your zone. And I went through the first half in like 1:07 and 44, I think it was. And so I was like, okay, I'm on a 2:16 pace here. And I felt good. But it's starting that second lap. And Beards, I don't know, you can share your thoughts. But when you take off on a marathon on a 2-lap course, 1 lap down, that's great. But then you're starting that second lap and it hits you. Damn.
Yeah.
I got to go do this again.
I know.
And it gets tough. I don't like that. But it's just the way it was. So I'm running along at about 14, 15 miles, feeling a little sorry for myself, running alone. And who should come up on me but Al Zetterlund and Steve Benson. 2 buddies from Minneapolis.
Oh, for sure.
I didn't know them personally. They knew you really well.
Oh, yeah.
I knew them. They knew me. And they were like, hey, Dunn, how you doing? I go, oh, I almost said, you guys, it is so good to see you because I've been running alone for like an hour, and these guys come along and they were going a little faster than me at this point. I was kind of, so I dropped in behind him and I said, hey, I'm just going to run with you guys if that's all right. And they're going, sure, we don't care. And they were friendly, very nice. And they were, it wasn't conversational, but it wasn't like, a 10K where everybody's just on the edge of dying. So we were running along and we got to about 19, 20 miles. And all at once I start feeling good.
Yeah.
And they're not, and Steve and Al were like, man, I'm starting to feel, they were kind of that 20-mile mark. And I'm not bragging. I kind of said, hey, okay, you guys, I didn't say like, see you later or anything, but I just kind of slowly left them. They were kind of slowing me down a little bit.
Sure.
And not that much. And I took off, and all at once up the road, I could see runners from your group, Dick.
Yeah.
And, I mean, when you get to 20 at that front group, stuff starts to go wrong really fast. And I remember starting passing runners. I remember I think Ron Tabb ended up DNFing.
Yep.
He fell off the lead pack, and I think with 4 or 5 miles to go, he knew he wasn't going to waste it, run 220, 221 and just jog it in. So I remember passing Ron Tabb, and then I remember catching Jeff Wells. I thought, Jeff Wells, he was falling off the pace.
Hurting too.
And then, I'm kidding you not, every time I'd see another runner, and that jacked me up and got me moving. And I got to like 25, like 20. I'm looking for that 26-mile mark. Who do I see in front of me but Lionel Ortega? And I knew he was in Runner's World magazine.
Yeah.
I passed Lionel Ortega at about the 26-mile mark. And let me tell you, I was moving because when I turned and I could see the finish line clock, I ran a race that you could see it. It was just like 2:19 and change, and I sprinted. And I ended up running 2:19.48 and got
First time under 220.
First time under 220.
What a feeling that must have been done.
I got seventh. I was seventh overall. And I was like, holy, now I knew you were ahead of me. And I didn't know anything more than that because I thought, well, Beards is up here somewhere. Beards, you were already being interviewed. I remember I crossed the finish line and they gave me a Houston Tentacle mug,
yes.
a glass, and they gave me a Houston Tentacle belt buckle. Like
everybody,
I think the top 100 got the mugs. Everybody got a belt buckle, and I grabbed those things, and I was just grinning. I was a Chessy cat grin from ear to ear. And I went into this again where the invited runners, if you're in the top 15, 20, they kind of squire you into this area. And there's Dick sitting at a table with Bill Rogers, you and John Ludwig. The first three, and I go, Beards, how did you do? And he goes, Don, I got second.
You're giving me goosebumps,
I said,
Don.
and he goes, I ran 2:12. I go, Beards, I ran 2:19. I think you're as excited for me as I was for you. And I go, Beards, I got seventh. And he goes, Don, and then you had to kind of go back, and he goes, I go, Beards, I'll talk to you later. Yeah. So I head up to this recovery area they had for runners, all this buffet, drinks, sandwiches, and I am just like on cloud nine. The endorphins have kicked in. I get a glass of, water. I get something to eat. And I'm sitting there just loving life. And you pop in and you're just loving life. And then Bill Rogers, I can only tell you this truth. He was a hurting unit. He had like a gastric problem during the race. And you can talk about that in a minute. And he was like out of the bathroom. He finished that race. I think he was in and out of the bathroom. And his jersey, he wore a Bill Rogers singlet, had holes in it. And the reason I found out later, when he crossed the finish line, the guy that takes that little tab off your number,
right?
That they didn't have the bar scanning in that day.
No.
They put it on a hanger or something like that. He was having trouble, and Rogers he grabbed his race number and yanked it off his jersey, and it just tore the safety pins, tore holes in it. And I remember the guy felt, and he was like, "Don't worry about it. He can afford another one." And he was up there with his wife at that time, and he was not feeling well at all. You were bouncing like a little kid on Christmas Day.
Well
you
done.
You had the grin on your face, and you were jacked. And now I'm gonna let you talk.
Well, so somewhere around 10, 11 miles, we still had a pretty good pack, and I did a hard surge. Try to break open the pack. And the only one that came was Bill. Everybody else didn't come. So
I didn't know that. I don't think we had talked to her. I forgot.
I don't even remember. I had a beard back then. It wasn't the only time I ever had a beard.
Yeah.
It was the ugliest looking beard you'd ever seen. But when we came back into town and had to make that sharp turn to go back out again.
Right.
There's a picture. I'll try to get it sent to you so you can put it up on the post here.
Yeah.
But there's a picture of Bill and I coming around this corner, side by side. Our arms, our legs are in the exact. It's a cool shot.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
So we're going out, and Bill and I are pretty much running, side by side.
Any conversation or not? No,
not much.
Okay.
Not much until about 22 or 23 miles. We're coming back towards downtown,
right.
And there was kind of a field off to our left and some woods. And Bill goes, Dick, man, I got to take a dump. So
what's he telling you for?
Well, I don't know, but he cuts across the field, and now I'm out there in the lead. But I'd had an on and off side stitch a little bit, So So Bill, I'd never seen a guy take a dump so quick and get back.
I heard it was 20 to 30 seconds. Somebody told me later.
And so all of next thing I know, Bill's right there with me again. Wow. So now there's no talking, and we're both running hard. I'm doing a few surges. Bill's doing a few surges, and then, gosh dang it, with maybe about a mile and a half to go, I got that bad stitch again, and right at the time when Bill kind of threw in one of his patented surges, and I just couldn't go with him. And he ended up beating me by like 30 seconds.
He ran 2:12.19. You ran 2:12.49.
Yes.
So you just took another over minute off your PR from New York just back 2 months ago.
Right.
And
so I was tickled.
Oh my gosh. You were like a kid on Christmas morning. You just finished second behind Bill Rogers, and you kind of, I heard it was a great race. And I remember then we were up there, in the recovery area, and a guy named Herm Atkins, you mentioned Herm earlier.
Yes.
He out-sprinted you for 9th place in that last trip to Honolulu. Well, Herm was at this race, Herm Atkins. Chuck Hattersley was there.
Yes.
All these great runners. And I remember Herm Atkins coming up to you. And Herm was a cool dude.
He was.
He's just a nice guy. And he goes, Beards, you got second. And he goes, yeah, I ran 2:12, and Rogers beat me by 30 seconds. And Herm Atkins basically said, and I'm not quitting. He goes, Beards, Bill got $15,000 to come to this race. He said, if you would have beat him, you'd be in that spot next time. The king of the road, when you're the top dog, they want you in your race. Well, if you beat the top dog, you're the top dog. All at once,
was close.
You were. And it's kind of like that in all sports. If you watch the PGA or something, the guy who wins the Masters gets like, I'm going to say $2 million. The guy who gets second does well, but the difference in the money is pretty
the
sizable.
cream rises to the top.
And it comes down to one stroke, and it costs you $500,000, or something like that. Well, in your case, that 30 seconds was the difference between you and knocking off Bill Rogers.
But Dunn, you were so tickled. Oh. I was so tickled for you. You were tickled for me. And then that night, man, we party on, baby.
Well, here's the deal. Beards and I, jog back to our motel, the Hyatt Regency, I think.
Hyatt Regency, yeah.
They had elevators on the outside of the building that were made out of glass, and you could rocket up the side of this thing and see the view. About make your stomach puke. But anyway, we got up to our rooms, showered up. I know I called Karen. I'm sure I called Collect. I don't know. Remember if you called, Mary?
Probably.
Collect, and stuff like that. Well, finally, the Houston Tenneco race committee had one of the executives, who was a gazillionaire, had a VIP social at his home that night. And you were definitely invited. I was with you, and I felt not so guilty now that I was in the top 10 finishers. So they came and got us in a limo. And I remember Ron Tabb and his wife were there. I can't remember who all rode in the limo with us, but we jumped in the back of this big stretch limo, and we were still feeling great. The endorphins hadn't worn off.
No.
And we went to this mansion. And, there was a buffet, there were drinks, all you wanted. And so we were just loading our plates, and you took me over, and I really appreciate this. You go, Mike, come on, I want to introduce you to Bill Rogers. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
Rogers, I was in high school when he won his first Boston. I'd been admiring, and I don't want to say hero worshiping this guy, but he was one of my running heroes.
Mine too.
So you led me over, and Bill was obviously feeling a little better physically now. And you go, hey, Bill, I want you to meet my best friend, Mike Dunlap. And he goes, hey, Mike, how'd you do today? And I go, Bill, I ran my personal best, 2:19. I got 7th. And he was like, man, that is awesome.
I know.
He was really a cool dude. And I remember he shook hands with me. And Beards, his hand was the tiniest little bag of bones. The guy was like a bird. I've shaken. You're skinny. Bill's hand, I thought I crushed it.
He's got like lady hands or something.
He's got girl hands.
He does.
I shook his hand, and it was like...
He still does.
Oh, my God. I hope he's not going to listen to this, because he'll probably be offended. But no, it was very... And it was kind of just noteworthy. And he was so very, very nice guy. We sat, drank, talked. We, mixed with the... And then somebody said, hey, let's go to Gilley's. And Gilley's, if you don't know this, watch the movie Urban Cowboy.
Yes.
With John Travolta and Deborah Winger. Gilley's was going full blast in 1981.
It was the place to go.
I forget. It's huge. It's got
honky-tonkin', baby.
It's got multiple nightclubs inside this building,
right.
multiple bars, dance floors. If you watch the movie, you'll get a little taste of it. So they haul us down there, a couple limo loads of these skinny runners. And we're all, we're having a few brewskis because everybody's feeling pretty good. And
sure.
I remember Al Zetterlund and Steve Benson are there, and we're all having fun. They have these electric bulls.
Right.
They have them
Bucket
like
bulls.
3 of them, 3 or 4 of them. And they got Al Zetterlund, Steve Benson. God, there was somebody else.
Gary
Bjorklund was on one. And the guys that run the bulls all look at each other, and they're making bets on who can throw their guy first. And the guys on the bulls are all making bets on who can stay on their bull the longest. And those guys were flying through the air because they were just like little 125, 40, 30-pound runners. And then they go, hey, done. Beards, your turn. And I remember you and I looked at each other, and we said, there ain't no way. We did not get on the bull. I don't care. I would have broken a missile.
Oh, me too.
Anyway, so then we headed over. They had these punching machines. Now,
that's
don't
right.
laugh. You could put a quarter or something, and they had a punching bag, and you'd wind up and just freaking smack this thing as hard as you could and prove what a man you are. And so here's all these skinny little 130-pound runners hitting this thing.
Oh, my gosh.
And I remember you were out there, Sissel Gothenburg.
From Sweden.
From Sweden. She got second. Patty Catalano won that race.
Yes.
And she finished second. And you love to dance.
Right.
And I am not a dancer, and I hate it. Karen will tell you she can't drag me out there. I will, just for her. But you were sitting there with Cecil, and she's just a cute little girl from Sweden.
Oh yeah.
And
I had been good. I had become good friends with her.
And your leg was a bopping. And she was sitting there, and you go, hey, Cecil, you go, yeah. And you're out there doing the Cotton Eye Joe and all this stuff.
Right.
Well, it gets to be like midnight. We've run a marathon today, and we've been partying all night, and they said, hey, we're taking a limo back. Anybody want to go? And like you and I are like, and you had to catch. I am not kidding, Beard. It's like a 6:30 a.m.
Yeah,
flight.
early.
We get into the hotel room like at midnight, 1 o'clock, and you go, done. I got to get up at like 5, and they're going to take me in a van to the airport. I'm going to try to be quiet and not wake you up. And I go, thanks, and you go, hey, great job. We'll talk after you get home and we'll see how things. He goes, now when you get up in the morning, if you're hungry, just order whatever you want. Just sign my name to it.
Order room service.
Order some room service. Get yourself some food. I go, oh, thanks, Beard. Thanks. I heard nothing, Beards. You left. I wouldn't. For all I know, you were still in the room. But I got up and it was 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I got out of bed and I'm so stiff and sore from running a marathon. And don't ask me why, but you always did it. I went out for a run. And I tried to run. I'll just call it I pogo sticked because my legs hurt. That concrete just pounded me to death.
Oh, it does.
And I suffered through like 2 or 3 mile run. Shouldn't have done it. My legs were just trash.
Nor should I have.
But anyway, it's what we did. And I get back to the room and I go, I'm going to order room service. I ordered the biggest honkin' breakfast they had on the menu. It's like $30 or something like that. Pancakes, eggs. So this little guy, I get out of the shower finally. I hear the doorbell, and it's like, hey, waiter or whatever. And I think, I got to tip this guy, So I had like $2, $3, and I thought, I'm from South Dakota, but I know you always tip the guy who brings you your food. So he rolls his food in there, and it's this. He looks like he's old. He's probably like 50. When you're 25, everybody who's 50 looks old. Well, he rolls it in there, and he goes, here's your food. And he started taking the lids off of things and getting it ready. I'm thinking, well, that's kind of cool. He goes, so did you run the marathon yesterday? And I said, yes, I did. Yes, I did. He goes, well, good for you. He said, how did you do? And I'm sitting there thinking, holy crap, I have to sign Dick Beardsley's name here. And I go, well, I got second. He goes, you got second? And I go, yeah. And he goes, wow. He said, that's fantastic. He goes, I just served Mr. Rogers his breakfast. And I said, how's Bill doing? And he goes, oh, he's doing great. He's doing great. Well, I signed Dick Beardsley on the receipt. I hand the guy the $3. I close the door and I think, oh my God, I just committed fraud. I said, I'm going to get I think there's like a what do they call it? A warrant out for me in Texas to this day for impersonating a runner. Bears, I closed the door and I just thought, I cannot believe I just did that. I just told this guy.
But we kind of look alike.
I was hoping he didn't question it, and I don't think he'd seen a picture of you yet.
What a great story.
Oh my Lord. So anyway, Bill Rogers, is really a unique guy. And I think this is a good time to tell them maybe.
I think so.
Dick, what are we going to talk about on our next episode?
Okay,
should we have a guest on? Who should we get?
Maybe we should have a guest. Huh?
Who's it going to be?
Well, it's going to be one of my favorite runners that I've been friends with since I tripped him at the New York City Marathon in 1980. Mr. Bill Rogers is joining us next week, Don. I am so gosh dang excited.
You just told me this before we started recording this, and I got to be honest with you. I'm going to have to prepare myself mentally because I might not be able to talk because I'll be so intimidated by this. I know everybody out there's going, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. But I am so super excited. I've only met Bill that one time at Houston. And, I've been at races like Boston in 83. He ran. I didn't get near the guy. I mean, I never said a boo to him. And so I have met him once. He was very cordial. I really appreciated his friendliness and that. And you've got some great stories about Bill.
Oh, and Dunn, of all the guys I used to compete at that high level, 40-some years ago, Bill and I have remained just wonderful friends. We are in contact with each other all the time. We've done a lot of expos and clinics together and talks. We had him into our Dick Beardsley half marathon twice in Detroit Lakes, So we are going to have fun. Bill's he's a great guy. Everybody, tell your friends because it's going to be a fun time next week with Bill. And we want to thank all of you for listening. And make sure you tell your friends because next week's going to be a lot of fun. And if you have any questions for Dunn and myself or comments about the show, you can contact us directly on our website at beardsanddunpod.com, or please leave us a comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Beards and Dun Pod.
Yeah, and of course, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe and like, and and send us some questions for Bill Rogers. I'm already starting to formulate in my mind, some of the things that I'm going to ask him, and I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a hoot.
Dun, have a great week, buddy.
Thanks, bud. Have fun at Grandma's tomorrow.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, bud. See you soon.